Are you a consulting business owner seeking a better way to scale to your next million in revenue? Accelerate Sales Podcast features other experts who have cracked the code to predictable revenues with proven sales systems that quickly increase revenue and get you on the fast track back to doing what you do best. Now let's accelerate your sales with today's episode.
Welcome to the Accelerate Sales Podcast. If you're first time listening, you love what you hear or see, please subscribe. If you're a regular, love an iTunes review. It means the world to me. So today we're going to talk all things SEO. And don't be frightened. There's a great way of explaining, and that's going to be given to you in a framework. It's called the Erica model, and you're going to absolutely love it. The next thing you're going to find out is around the frequency of doing your SEO, and I think it's really going to shock you. And then the last one is particularly for podcasters, but it is for all content. How does Google search and what does users do differently to maybe other platforms like an iTunes search or something like that? Something I'd never heard of before, and it really makes sense, and it's got me doing some actions. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Gert Mellak from SEO Leverage. Welcome, Gert Mellak from SEOleverage.com to the Accelerate Sales Podcast. Great to have you here, Gert.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, normally I have you in my ears because I often hear you on Superfast Business, which I know James is your mentor, James Schramko, and he's been very good to me over the years. And normally listening to you there, so I've got a little bit better prep than what I have for some other podcasts. But SEO is a bit what could I say? A bit tricky. Out of all of the marketing disciplines, I think it's the one that, no matter how many podcasts I've listened to, how many people I've interviewed, I keep adding bits of knowledge, but it's not as if it comes to me straight away. So we want you to help make that a bit clearer for all those consultants out there today. But why don't we kick off with, who you love to work with?
That's a great question. I definitely add bits and pieces to my SEO knowledge on a daily basis as well. I've been doing so for quite a few years. Our perfect client is probably a small to medium-sized business. We work a lot with online businesses, a lot with membership sites, a lot with consultants, authors. Essentially, many of our clients have been creating content over quite a few years, have been writing their blog, have been doing maybe a podcast, etc. Have been essentially consistently creating content over time. And Google, quite a few years ago, used to give you a lot of visibility for this content. So it didn't matter too much how it was structured, if this was a transcription or an article, or if these links weren't that important in the past as they are today, for example, relevant links. So it was a little bit, quote unquote, easier. It was difficult with the knowledge we had back then. And we didn't have the tools we have today. But it was, I think, easier to get visibility on Google than it is these days. So many of my clients have been really successful in the past, have been building their brand with content marketing, with podcasts, etc., but have then seen that it gets trickier. So some of my clients were the first in their niche, the first in their industry, really putting the word out there, and have been established authorities in their space for a while. But then there were new people coming in with latest SEO tactics, with links, outranking them. Maybe they were focusing on their business. There were competitors coming in and just taking over the space on Google. So we work with many clients in this way, where we have to audit their site, apply our framework and things like those.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely dive into your framework in a moment. But if you had to take a guess for most consultants, a consultant's generally the ones that, been in it for a long time, they're thought leaders, and therefore, you're helping them readjust, like you said, or do you find that consultants can sometimes be a little lacking in content and it's more a kickoff for you? If you had to take a percentage mix of the two, what do you think it is?
It's an interesting point because it would probably be 50-50. We have consultants that have really gotten their first clients by just putting out their methodology, their way of analyzing, for example, a business, or life coaches or consultants as well. Just keep putting the word out there, sharing their thoughts, sharing their ideas, etc. And then you've got consultants that maybe grow their business referral based, and are now saying, look, this, I don't know, they might be running some Facebook ads, some LinkedIn ads or something like this, or get traffic from there. But then the pandemic, for example, hit, and they started searching for their services or searching for their for what they actually do, and they can't find themselves. So then it's really, let's build up a content basis and let's start increasing your relevance in this space. So I think it could be a 50-50 based on my experience.
Okay, all right. Well, look, if we look at, let's say it's 50-50, right? But if you look at the problems they're trying to solve, right? I know SEO is, it's like a vehicle to get you to a certain destination. What are some of the problems that the consultants in particular come to you with, knowing or hoping that SEO will solve?
Absolutely. Consultants usually are interested in leads. So they're interested in being found when someone wants to solve the problem they help solving with. So if I want to grow my customer base, I want to acquire more clients, I want help in sales, for example. This is where they then see other consultants coming up. They type in help with sales or or get more clients or something like those. They see other consulting firms coming up. And then the question is, why am I not there? I'm not even in the first 10 pages on Google, and essentially only the first page and probably mostly the first half of the first page counts. Yes. In order to really scale a business. So that they then ask the question, why are they not there? What they never ask themselves is, do I have anything that really deserves to be there? Is there any content Google could show a user from my website in order to make them happy? And this is ultimately what Google wants. Google wants to make users happy, and they're not going to be happy if they come to a service page, to an about page, to a contact page. They need actual content that speaks to exactly what the user is looking for at this precise moment. This is not a generic service or sales page. And this is what we really need to understand if we want to start leveraging SEO for lead generation, that there is a particular problem someone wants to solve, and I can help them solve it. And if I do this in a very good way, have a very good lead magnet, they might even opt in and download my lead magnet when they find me. And they're going to be happy. And then it's really on the back end, on the mailing list, in order to get more trust, create more connection, more rapport with this particular user. This is just one person really that needs to be convinced here, and then get them to take action.
And just before we go through the framework, on the content itself, right? So, I've heard people mention that, you should start with what you enjoy the most, right? Which I suppose is a little bit different to what your audience generally consumes. But so for me, as an example, I love podcasting. It's great to have you on the show. It then allows me to repurpose. I've got video, I've got audio, etc. So, for me, that's a natural thing. I don't like writing blogs as much. So I like one asset to do all the heavy lifting. In your experience, is it what you're most comfortable with is the best content, or should you really map your audience first and then adapt you to meet your audience? I'd just love to, is it the chicken or the egg? I suppose that's what I'm asking you.
I think with podcasting in particular, what comes to my mind is that podcasting is really great for search engines from podcasting platforms, right? So we have different search engines in our lives. iTunes has a search engine. Amazon has a search engine. SoundCloud has a search engine, right? The search engine I pick already tells something about what I expect to find. So if I go to iTunes and I search about sales and consulting, or sales for consulting, and I find Paul Higgins' podcast about how to help me sell better or learn more about sales, I'm going to be happy, right? If I go to Google, we need to ask ourselves how many of 10 people doing a Google search about selling expect to find a podcast. Probably, I always say 1 out of 10. And I think it's probably on the upside, right? On the higher side. Yes. Most people, when they come to Google, they don't expect to find a podcast. They don't have the time to listen to a 30-minute, 40-minute podcast in order to find out the information they're looking for. They're looking for an article. They're looking to skim something. They're looking to click on the table of contents to jump directly to the section that they think is going to answer their question. So if my vehicle is a podcast, I need to be very clear about the reach I really have and the platforms I can really cover. If I want to cover more platforms, I need to adapt my way of presenting this content to the different platforms in the same way as you repurpose a podcast and take a snippet and prepare it specifically for Facebook, why don't you put the 30-minute episode up there? Because it's not what the platform expects. But from Google, we expect that Google brings us to a page where there is a play button and a podcast player and 200 words of show notes. And we expect Google to rank this. And this is, I think, a big misconception. We cannot expect the platform to do anything that's not going to be good for the users. So I think a big part of what we do with clients, with consultants, when we work with them, is to really have them understand what is the particular moment someone is in when they type in a search in Google. What is it that they expect? So one of the main tools we use here is Google itself, because Google is going to tell us what they think users want to see. I've no idea. And it's not even industry specific, it's query specific.
Yes.
So a search query triggers a different result than another search query, right? So if I search for best sales consultant, it's very different from how to get better at sales. It's completely two different search intents, right? So on the one hand, we probably see homepages ranking from sales consultants or comparisons of different sales consultants and their methodology. In the other one, we're looking for a long form article that probably walks us through everything that's related to sales with links to further resources, etc. I cannot rank with this one on the other query. It's impossible because it wouldn't make users happy. Right. If I want to get anything from Google, I first of all need to present them with something that actually makes sense for them to rank.
Great. And therefore you can still repurpose the podcast, but it's got to be in a way that is beneficial. What about, I've heard that LinkedIn are going to start indexing posts, right? Which will be able to search on Google itself. Have you heard that, or you're across that at all?
Not too much, to be honest. I know there is a big leverage when publishing or leveraging other platforms and their authority for your content. So we're more about controlling your assets, having good control, because what do you do if you base your entire strategy on LinkedIn posts, because at some point, or medium.com or whatever it may be, and this tends to rank well, and then they flip a switch and this is not indexed anymore, and Google just can't show it anymore, or they don't allow Google to crawl it anymore, like most of Facebook's property, for example. What happens then, right? So I'm very reluctant on having a client base their strategy on a third-party platform they don't control. It can be a good complementary solution, maybe, where they say, okay, whenever I publish a blog post, if I have resources available, I might rewrite this or repurpose this or write maybe a shorter version on a third-party platform. But this is, again, original content. We need to put a lot of effort in this, and we need to treat it like a content that's specifically optimized for a certain platform. So I wouldn't base an SEO strategy on getting my content ranked on other platforms. And then on top of this, Google, I think, is not going to rank you just because you have your post there, if you're not an authority in this community or an authority in your space. So Google, I think, can connect the dots and see how active are you in LinkedIn, what type of authority are you in LinkedIn. So if I write tomorrow about life coaching on a platform, on a third-party platform, Google would be smart enough not to rank my post because I've got no idea about life coaching, right? Yes. So yes. I think Google is very smart these days, and this is where I think comes the difference between SEO from maybe 5-10 years ago and SEO today. Google has their algorithm with many layers and complexities, etc., and they can figure a lot of things out based on context. And this is where those quick wins are, where it's okay, now I do this because this is going to work right now in Google, and tomorrow it might not work. But I think those times are mostly over.
Great. Well, look, that's a really good summary, but I'm sure most people listening or watching at the moment are thinking, well, this is why I need an expert like Gert, right? Because what he just explained, it sort of makes sense, but it's not as if I could then go and tell someone else what you just said, right? And that's why you're the expert, and that's what you do. And I know you've got a framework called Erica, right, which you help. And what I'd love you to do in the next sort of 5 minutes is just run through the framework, but link it to some specific examples for consultants. Okay, so let's go for it.
Absolutely. So the Erica framework, this is an acronym I've come up with really refining this over many, many years. And then we ended up publishing a book about it and creating an application to help our clients really apply this specifically. It's an acronym. E stands for evolution, R for research, I for interlinking, C for content, A for action steps. First step, and this is what we do every couple of weeks. We have been testing this with several clients, doing this once a month, doing this every week, doing this every 3 days, etc. Yes. What worked the best was apply this framework every couple of weeks. And applying this framework for us means that we take their project through every single step every couple of weeks. So when we start with E for evolution, this is where we want to be.
Just on that, Gert, so why the frequency of fortnight or bi-monthly or every 2 weeks?
This is what we were just testing. This works really well. So first of all, we want to be very close to what Google is doing, right? So imagine we had a client, I think this was a consultant as well from Melbourne, I believe. From Brisbane. And Google suddenly decided in their niche to only show home pages, not inner articles or service pages anymore. This was just they switched, and from their position 2 ranking, they came to a page 3 ranking overnight.
Right.
Imagine you only do this once a month or twice or every 2 months, etc. You might not even be aware of this.
Yeah. Or even worse.
If you have a working business, you don't check your rankings every day because you don't have time for that. Not even SEO agencies necessarily check your rankings every single day. Yes. We want to see the overall trends. So you might not find out, and then until you react, until Google processes this, etc., there's a very big time lag. So you want to be very close to what's happening.
Yep.
One week frequency has been shown to be too close. So from me suggesting a client what they should be doing, I could suggest it every week. To them, delegating this to their team, getting this executed, getting this back to us, revising, etc., giving them feedback. A week is not long enough. It's not realistic. So we had always tasks piling up and suggestions piling up over time, which is frustrating and doesn't bring results. Yes. So then I said, let's split this out 2 weeks, and this is perfect. This requires some consistent efforts on the client side, but has been showing to be really the perfect way to be close to Google, but still be able to execute and turn quick enough based on Google's algorithm changes and perceptions, etc.
All right, Brent. Now, you've got condensed time now to get through the arrogant model after that question. So evolution. So that was the first one. So, what are a couple of key examples you can give about evolution? Because, I went through your fantastic masterclass and you talked about, conversions, benchmarking, et cetera. But what are the things specific that a consultant should think about in the evolution step?
Absolutely. In the evolution step, first of all, we always want to benchmark against competitors, right? We don't need to be the best out there. We need to be a little bit better than your competitors at all stages, right? So we need to always monitor them, always know what they are doing, what's working for them, etc. We had a consultant, for example, in the language learning space, and they had a competitor who suddenly went down. So we were in this evolution step able to identify where they went down, which specific 2 articles went down. Yes. We were able to inform our client about what they should be doing about the same topic in terms of content, internal linking, external linking, specifically on those 2 topics their main competitor lost. And they were able to take over their positioning and then started really to skyrocket.
How do you, what is it? Is it me coming up with who my competitors are? Is it you coming up and then, working joint together? What's the best way to come up with your competitor set? Because a lot of consultants say, look, I serve people globally, but, for me as a sales strategist that works for consultants, who do I know who my key competitors are?
A competitor is who comes up for the search queries where you want to rank.
Okay.
This can be a blog that doesn't even offer the service, can still be a competitor of yours because they take away the attention of Google users and draw them to their blog rather than to your services. So you want to be really clear about for which topics do you want to come up. Yeah. Sometimes clients have specific search queries. Sometimes they say, look, everything around, video production, I need to be there. Whatever they search around video production, I want to be this person, right? Or whatever they search for conversion optimization, I need to be there. Or they have specifics and say, okay, whenever it's e-commerce and conversion optimization, I want to be in this particular niche. And this makes a lot of sense to pick really your expertise And then we research keywords for our clients and say, okay, these are the keywords we do the researches on social, on Quora, on Reddit, wherever. This is how people search for what you're doing, right? So when they search for this, we want you to ultimately rank on page 1. The higher on top, the better, right? So everybody who comes up for the search queries where you are the expert and you want to rank is essentially your competitor. So you want to then identify a few just to get an idea about the competitive landscape and know what's happening on page 1. How do they move around? Well, when does Google suddenly rank a forum higher than the consultants, for example? Why might this be the case? What is the top 10 really? What does it consist on? It's not always only consultants. It might be a mix of consultants and agencies and maybe a blog post that doesn't offer a service, etc. So you want to be really close to your competitors, but also see in the evolution step, how does everything we have been doing so far actually work? So what are the things we have implemented? Does this now drive more leads? Have we changed this lead magnet? Is this now getting more conversions? Where do the leads come from? So what is the content that actually brings in the right people that are ready to take the next step and download something? This is very different from people just consuming the information and leaving or bouncing off your website. So this is where in the evolution step, we just try to map where do they come from? What's the current situation on the competitive landscape, and conversion wise, where do they come from?
Okay, great. So the next, what have we got? 4, if you can just give a quick elevator pitch, because I want to make sure that we get to the action, the rapid fire as well. So the next one is research. So what's a key point about the research in context to a consultant?
Right. Research comprises a lot of things. Definitely competitive research is just always something we do. So in the evolution step, we check what is the current situation? Where are we? Benchmarking. Research is really diving into a competitor. What is working for them? Where are they ranking on page 2, page 3? They might be a little bit weak there. How can we leverage this? How can we take advantage of this? Maybe they have already done something well, but are missing something. So we can pretty much use a similar strategy, or maybe we need to reinvent the wheel here completely. We research the technical side of things as well. Very often there are handbrakes on a website really where they say, okay, this is just a technical block. This is why this can't rank, and we can see what can be done there. We do a lot of user experience studies because Google ultimately, they want to rank your content if it suits Google users. But if the content isn't well presented, the site is slow, it doesn't work well on a mobile phone, etc., there can be technical issues that also need to be done in the research step.
Yeah, and I know that you have a good example of the UX and a result as well. So if you watch that masterclass, which we'll put a link to, you can see that. So interlinking. So you talk there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's the I? What's
I is for internal and external linking. We call this interlinking. Links are votes of confidence. So a page linking to another page essentially says, user, go to that page because this is a good reference in this space. Like Wikipedia does and gives you all the references. This is really where I think this comes from. And this works both from external websites and also internal pages. So a page on your site linking to another page in a certain context is giving Google 2 dots to connect. Okay, so I talk about email marketing, a link to a page that talks about subject lines. Google is going to match them together and say, okay, this email marketing article might also be ranking for some subject line topics, for example, because it links together with another article.
Right. And okay, so just on that, should you specifically or proactively put links to other articles, which you're saying is going to increase based on your model?
We want to give Google context. We want to go away from a model where we just click new post, and just add to the category. And at some point we have 200 posts in the same category. And with the pagination, nobody's going to click. We want to have a good idea about the structure of the website and say, okay, this is really, I'm talking about sales. And when it comes to sales, we have in-person sales, we have virtual, we have email, sales via email, etc. You map this out really literally on a spreadsheet. We map this out. Yes. Visually, so clients can understand this is my website. And now I want to create a piece of content about subject lines, and I can see where in the structure is this going to go, and how do I then need to link this together so Google can actually make sense of it.
And from someone that's said, look, I've just spent, some people might have spent $10,000-$15,000 on a website, and they know that they haven't got this right, so they're listening at the moment. Like, how difficult is it to go and restructure it? Because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, gee, that sounds like a lot of work. How much work is it for the owner themselves to restructure that?
you're probably not going to change the design, but you're trying to give Google more context between the content you already have, right? If you don't have content, you start out and can make sure that this content is really structured. Structure really means how is this connected, right? Not how is this visually on the menu or navigation bar, but how is this really connected? How can that user that comes to this main article now go more specific? Is there a link pointing to this, or do they need to search in my category archive and find another article that talks about this topic in a little bit closer, right? So this is where we map this out. And this can be very often it's assistants doing this for a business. They go in and based on our instructions, then place certain links in order to make sure this happens. But links also affects other websites. So Google is not going to trust a website that doesn't have any links from outside.
Yes.
So the best content isn't good enough. Google is not going to trust you if there are not other people trusting you as well. You can open up your business if nobody refers to you, nobody talks well about you, etc. It's going to be really rough, right? In internet happens the same. Happens exactly the same. So you want to make sure that your content also attracts and gets links from other relevant people in this authority. Ideally, the people also ranking and somewhere for similar queries on Google because they apparently seem to be relevant in this space.
Yeah, and I know that you're also talking that part around getting rid of toxic links, which we won't go into right now. I know the next one's content. So just a couple of key points on content.
Absolutely. Write the content that Google wants to rank. This is not the same today as it was last month, possibly, and definitely not as it was 2 years ago. So you want
and you with your clients, Gert, sorry to cut you off there, but with your clients, are you directing that? Are you saying, look, based on this change, this is what I think you should write about?
Yes. So we tell them not only what they should write about, we also tell them what they should rewrite. So there might be content from 2015 lying around where we say, look, we used to do really well. The topic was great, but the presentation isn't good enough, or it doesn't attract any leads. Maybe we can rewrite this to prepare the reader to really do the opt-in afterwards, right? So we just try to leverage what is already there. It's not always a rewrite. We have clients where we almost forbid them to write new content. They have so much, they just need to go back and rewrite all this stuff.
Yeah, and is too much content therefore not always a good thing?
Absolutely, especially if you don't make it clear what you want to rank. Imagine you have 20 articles about how to sell more.
Yes.
How could Google possibly choose which one to rank? And you want Google to know which one. You don't want Google to rank one every day because otherwise you can't optimize, right? So you want to make it clear. There are technical methods to make it clear to Google which one you want to rank, and the internal linking should help. But too much content can confuse Google, yes.
Yeah, and I've heard that also, like if you were right, so let's say for me, it hasn't been a huge change, but at one point, I ran an outsourcing business, right? So that outsourcing business I sold, I no longer have that, but I might have blogs that still relate to that. So will Google, in that case, get confused as to, well, hang on, he's writing about virtual assistants and how to do that, but then now he's also talking about sales. Is that, I suppose, a simple example of how Google could get confused as to, well, what really is your core topic?
I think the confusion happens when we talk a lot about the same thing and you're not clear of what search intent you're targeting. So every piece of content should target a search intent, a reason why someone opened up Google and searched for something. And if you don't make this clear, it's definitely an issue. There's also a thing about topical relevance. So on SEOleverage.com tomorrow, I would talk about how to get your virtual assistant in one article. I would probably not be relevant. If I have been doing this for a while, probably at some point Google said, yeah, apparently they also know a thing or two about virtual assistants. So we can start ranking them. So there is a term called topical relevance, right? Where we say, okay, you kind of need to be able to back this up, right? You can, the same way as in a conversation, if you just talk, say one or two phrases about a subject, but nothing else, Google people might not believe you as much as if you were able to do a 60-minute speech on this topic.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know the last one's action, but because we're a little bit tight on time, I'll sum it up to say that 2 weeks you said, but I think the most important thing is taking that action. I think your team as well is really important there. And I know that you've got a fantastic platform that you've had for around 12 months. And that's what really, when I was listening to you, inspired me to get onto the call, because some people I've worked with in the past with SEO, it's very confusing as to where is everything. But if you go through and watch the masterclass on Gert's, you can actually see that he's got each of the Erica steps, and he's actually got the key actions to take. And I think, well done. I think that's, I haven't seen it by any other SEO business. And I think what you created there is brilliant. So before we go into the rapid fire section, I just want to ask you a simple question. Have you got the sales system to get you the revenue that you want? And for a lot of you, you would be nodding your head and saying yes, which is fantastic. Well done. But some of you might say, well, I don't know what a sales system is, because you may have come from corporate, you may have never been trained in sales, you just got referrals, right? And you're just working that referral engine, but not in a system way. So what we've got is a pulse check. So you can go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/pulse and answer the 9 questions in 3 minutes, and then we'll have a call and I can help you fill those gaps. It's not a sales call, it's just helping you fill those gaps. So it's paulhigginsmentoring.com/pulse, and I hope that my SEO is well crafted with that. Good. So we go into the rapid fire section. I'll ask you a question, you give me a quick answer. You ready for that?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, great. So what's a habit, a sales habit, if you think of your business? What's a sales habit that you do on a regular basis?
Provide upfront value.
Brilliant. And from a technology point of view that helps you accelerate sales, what do you use?
Tons of SEO tools.
Yeah, but any sales, like do you use a sales CRM or anything specific to sales?
Email. We're very conversational. We try to build trust through email.
Okay, great. And are you Google?
And Zoom, probably. Google, obviously.
Yeah.
Google, obviously, and definitely email and the SEO.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think Loom videos would be good in the technology space as well. Loom videos are really, really useful.
Yeah, excellent. And if I've got a partner as well, Dub, that they're a good sponsor of our solo podcast. So that's a good comparison that you can do to use Loom, but that's also a good product, of course. What about your source of new ideas, like for sales, like you improving how you sell? Where do you go to find those?
I think we are very focused on SEO and giving the best SEO value rather than on sales, because once people see that we know what we're talking about and can show results, we don't have to focus so much on sales, but really focus on providing more and more value, get better and better results. And this is ultimately what builds the trust to get people to take action.
Okay, great. And the next one is, how do you give back?
We are supporting right now, I think, almost 25 families connected to our team. Right now, we support a local NGO here in Spain, in Madrid, who is working on social integration. And we once in a while we help social enterprises. So I think we're doing quite a few things here. Okay,
great. Well, look, the last question is, after all the great advice you've given, if you could just circle on one action that people could do to 10 times their sales, what would that be?
Absolutely consistency. So consistency paired with patience is leading to results.
Yeah, I've got to say, I lost some patience recently around my SEO. And then when I got taken through the results and looked at how far we'd come in 6 months, which wasn't as obvious to me, I realized that it is something. So you're right. It's consistent. It's for the long haul. You've given lots of great advice, and I know you're going to give more in the book as well. So if you go to seoleverage.com/book, Gert has got his book there. He goes through that Erica. And also, like I said, we'll put the link to the masterclass, which I found very informative as I was preparing for this podcast interview today. Okay. So, Gert, absolute pleasure to have you on all the way from Spain. And it's been great listening to all the wisdom you shared today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, need to take a breath of air after that one. Certainly Gert does. He's got so much knowledge. His knowledge of SEO is just it's inspiring and infectious. And, if I've learned anything from this is go and see him. I know he does do some SEO audits. Go and do that, and also grab his book. So, what were the other key things I learned was, that 2 weeks, I think it's so important. So if you're not doing that, and let's face it, if you're not doing any SEO, there's a golden opportunity, right? Because as he said, you can't rely on other platforms like LinkedIn, etc. You need to own your own content and have organic reach. And obviously, the search, to me, it seemed, I just missed it, right? It wasn't as obvious to me. So what I'd love you to do is move from the learning to the action, right? So share with myself on social media, and also mentioning Gert on what you learned from it, okay? So that we know the action that you took out of it. So that'd be great. Also, there's the full transcript. There's the links. I'll put the links to the book. I'll put the links to the masterclass that we spoke about, so you can see that Erica framework as well. And, if you've got friends that would really get value from this, please be the sales hero and share it with them, okay? Don't keep it to yourself. Please share it with them. And, many people struggle with SEO, as you know, so it'd be great for you to share this with them. If you want to know that system, if you've got the right system to get your next million, just go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/pulse, and you can take that and check out the solo show. So I do solo episodes every week, and they're much more specific on examples that I've done around sales strategies. Please take action to accelerate your sales.
I'm fired up after today's episode. What about you? But hey, before you go, learning is just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to put today's strategy into action. Head over now to today's show page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast and share how you'll put it into action. Be sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Tell me what your favorite episode is. And don't wait 1 minute more to gain access to your pulse check at paulhigginsmentoring.com. This could be the difference between struggling to get more leads and making this next quarter your best one yet.